The National Economic and Development Authority wants to downgrade Metro Manila to general community quarantine status by the middle of May. In defense of President Duterte's Sinopharm vaccination, the country's top health officials insist that the chief executive is covered by his security detail's compassionate special permit. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. wants to prioritize Metro Manila and other high-risk areas for COVID-19 vaccination. After the backlash, Hong Kong is reviewing its mandatory COVID-19 vaccination requirement for all domestic workers. And the Supreme Court has resumed oral arguments on the anti-terror law. This time around, the justices quizzed government lawyers about red tagging. Focused and fearless. Here's a roundup of stories we're watching now. I'm Sean Yao. The National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, is pushing to downgrade Metro Manila to GCQ status this month, citing the economic disadvantages of MECQ. Octa Research Fellow Professor Guido David is with us over the phone to talk about that some more. Guido, is this proposal worth looking into considering our current COVID situation, considering our numbers?
Hi, good afternoon, Sean. This is worth looking into. We understand that the economy has, let's say, suffered a great deal, especially during the lockdown that we had recently. But having said that, I mean, I believe it's premature to decide one way or the other. The good news is that the NCR is still seeing a decrease in numbers, but we won't know the full effects of MEC Flex until maybe after about 1 week at least, because there's a delay between the time of implementation and the time that we see the full effects. Right now, we're still seeing effects of the previous MECQ, so I believe that it's too early to say either way right now. If the trend is going to be sustained, if we are ready for a downgrade to GCQ by May 15th.
All right. Well, now that you mention it, that downward trend, it is continuing, and that is very, very good to hear. But has the situation in hospitals improved somewhat?
Well, the hospital occupancy has actually improved, and they have scaled up hospital facilities, hospital beds. What's worrying is that we're seeing an increase in the number of ICU occupancy, even after we have increased ICU capacity. So right now we have 850 ICU beds occupied, and that's actually the highest it's ever been. So it means that even though we're on a downward trend and things are improving, the ICU bed occupancy is actually increased. And this is something worth looking into. We're actually looking at the data, to determine why the ICU admissions have not subsided yet, even though the number of cases has started to drop.
And has the data told you anything thus far about why ICU occupancy is up despite overall hospital occupancy being on the downside?
Well, it probably means that there's significant length of stay for ICU occupants, and that the trend, even though it's already trending downward in NCR, there is still a significant number of cases. And a percentage of these cases will require ICU admissions. It might be attributed to the variants. I mean, that's a possibility. We're definitely looking into that.
All right. And on the matter of vaccines, the president finally got his jab. In your opinion, would this help curb vaccine hesitancy among the population?
I believe it should. Of course, there's still probably a division in the population. Those who would want to get vaccinated, and those who have hesitancy. But I believe that this is an important day for the Philippines, for the president to get vaccinated. I believe people have been waiting for this, and well, finally it came to fruition.
Right, but does a matter of his getting vaccinated with Sinopharm, this is contradictory to what health officials are saying, to just get any jab that is available. But he, of course, got to pick the brand of his jab. Do you think this will cause issues moving forward?
Well, anything the president does will probably will cause an issue to certain groups of people. Me personally, I believe that, well, his doctors recommended that he take this brand, and I take the doctor's word that that is what he will need. Anyway, the president has, he's not very young anymore, so we have to consider the comorbidity issues or factors. And I don't really have a problem personally with the president being able to choose his own brand.
All right, what about with the proposal of vaccine czar Charlie Galvez's to just prioritize high-risk areas instead for vaccination as we face delays with the delivery of other vaccines?
Oh, yes, Sean. We've actually been advocating this strategy even during the early part of the year. I believe even as early as January, February, we have already been pushing for NCR to be prioritized. But this became a bigger issue ever since we had the surge in the NCR. If there was no surge, then the urgency was not there. But right now, we really have a sense of urgency because we want the economy to recover as quickly as possible, and that will require vaccinations. And if we wait to get 70% for the entire country, that may take until next year or even until 2023, and that may be too long. And there are some areas in the Philippines which are really of high risk. They haven't really had any major outbreak, and if they did, they were able to control it. So we actually wrote a paper about this. It's a strategy for vaccination that prioritizes high-risk areas, and those low-risk areas are not highly prioritized. They will receive vaccines, but in relatively smaller quantities.
All right, very interesting. Thanks as usual for your time and your insights. Octa Research Fellow Guido David, thank you. And the Food and Drug Administration insists that they were not informed that Sinopharm vaccines have entered the country. FDA Director General Eric Domingo said they only found out when President Duterte received his first dose of the China-made jab on Monday night. Despite this, Domingo said the president is covered by the compassionate special permit issued to the PSG or Presidential Security Group last February. Domingo added that Sinopharm has not yet submitted the necessary requirements for emergency use authorization.
Until yesterday, hindi ko naman alam pa na meron ng Sinopharm. Of course, it was really intended for the security of the president and of course for his health. Kaya ang hiningi nila noon ay mga PSG members and yung close contact, relatives.
When asked why the president opted for Sinopharm's vaccine, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said it was the vaccine brand prescribed by Duterte's doctor.
Ito ay pinahintulutan gamitin by virtue of the compassionate special permit. Kasama po yan doon sa batch na ginamit sa PSG.
And the government is coming up with ways to achieve herd immunity within the year whilst opening up the economy as soon as possible. Dale De Vera with the full story.
The private sector is pushing for the COVID-19 vaccination of all employees in order to fully open the economy. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion says that this is the only way for employees to safely return to their workplaces. But vaccine hesitancy is still rampant among workers.
Yung mga supervisor managers pa rin namin ang kailangan very instrumental sa pag-convince sa mga empleyado na talagang kailangan. Kasi kung kalahati or let's say 70% sa isang shift ang kukuha ng vaccine, yung iba the others are also at risk. No? Kasi yung efficacy ng mga vaccine, hindi naman 100%.
Concepcion adds that vaccination in the private sector will remain voluntary. For its part, the Labor Department has advised companies to boost vaccine confidence among their employees. It's a good thing that some workers are willing to take the shot.
Since kasi medyo madami na rin kasing cases and then marami na din yung nasa death toll, siguro as a netizens din, or I mean as a citizen din, kailangan talaga para at least safe din. Lalo na bumabiyahe ako tsaka expose ako sa tao.
Parang yung isip ko buo na kasi sa sa dami ng kaso. Tapos may mga kilala na rin naman ako nakapagpa-vaccine. Since okay naman sa kanila, parang hindi na ako nagdadalawang isip.
The private sector is expecting 1.3 million doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine by June. At least 100 companies stand to benefit from this, including RFM, Ayala Group of Companies, and TAN Group of Companies. To make the vaccine rollout more effective, Vaccine Czar Carlito Galvez Jr. has recommended to prioritize high-risk areas and places with high economic activity.
Kung makuha natin po yung 70% o yung herd immunity ng mga areas nito, malaki ang chances natin na makarecover natin ang economy po natin. At malaki po ang chances na mapiprevent natin yung tinatawag nating surge dito sa mga traditional areas na very vulnerable po siya.
The Philippines would need 15 million doses every month to achieve this. For News 5, Dale De Vera, We're One News.
We have more stories after this short break. Keep it here. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. The Supreme Court has resumed oral arguments on the controversial anti-terrorism law. Marlene Alcaide is on the ground in Manila to give us the updates. Hi, Marlene. What went on today? What were the highlights of today's session?
Yes, Sean, Solicitor General Jose Calida was present on the 6th day of the Supreme Court's oral arguments for the anti-terrorism law. But just like the other week, Calida's assistants Marisa de la Cruz Halandines and Raymond Rigodon answered in his stead during interpellation. Justice brought up the red tagging of Community Pantry initiator Ana Patricia Non and other organizers by the NTF-ELCAC. Asked how the government would ensure that the ATL won't be abused for red tagging, Halandines claimed that the NTF-ELCAC is just truth tagging. Meanwhile, Justice Joseph Lopez questioned the ATL's 24-day extended detention period, since the 1987 Constitution states that it should only have a maximum of 3 days. Justice Lopez asked if the Constitution should already be changed. He also asked about the authorization power of the Anti-Terrorism Council, or ATC. ATL Section 29 authorizes the cabinet-led ATC to order warrantless arrest based on mere suspicion. The Soljan's assistants argued that the creation of the ATC won't lead to abuse as penalties are in place. They said probable cause should still be the standard. They also clarified that a so-called delisting is available under the implementing rules and regulations. If ever an individual wants to appeal an ATC decision, he or she may freely go to the office of the President, then to the Court of Appeals. Sean, during the oral arguments, the OSG said that the 37 consolidated petitions questioning the law should be dismissed because no actual controversy was raised. Sean?
All right, Marlene, will the oral arguments continue every Tuesday from here on forward?
Yes, the next oral argument is scheduled Tuesday next week.
All right, thank you for that report. Marlene Alcaide of News 5 joining us live from the Supreme Court in Manila. Moving on now to other stories we're keeping our eyes on. Philippine Consul General in Hong Kong, Rally Tejada, thanked the financial hub's government for moving to review the measure on mandatory vaccination of foreign domestic helpers. Hong Kong initially wanted to make vaccination mandatory for foreign helpers as a prerequisite for contract renewal, but was flagged for discrimination concerns. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs asked our Foreign Affairs Secretary, Teddy Boy Locsin Jr., to mind his manners after Locsin's expletive-laden warning to Chinese vessels that are still lingering in Philippine waters. In a statement, spokesperson Wang Wenpin said that megaphone diplomacy does more harm than good and that the Philippines should respect China's jurisdiction. Locsin had earlier apologized to China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi. Still on the West Philippine Sea dispute, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario has reiterated his plea for President Duterte to enforce the 2016 arbitral ruling. In a statement, Del Rosario said it is the duty of the president to protect the land, whether or not it was promised during the campaign. And in India, a man dressed up as a clown while conducting disinfection activities, offering some comic relief amid their country's situation. Ashok Kurmi disinfected several homes in Mumbai while handing out masks to children. Kurmi, who works for a pharmaceutical company, also educated the kids on how to stop the spread of the virus. But while Kurmi tries to lighten up everyone's moods with his antics, he likewise emphasizes that India's situation must be taken seriously. The South Asian country has reported over 300,000 new cases for a 12th straight day. For more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Sean Yao. We are One News.